Greetings and welcome to the show, Black Fridays, where we are focused on raising our children to be proud and black. I am your host today, Freddie Taylor, the CEO and founder of Urban Intellectuals, where we make it fun and easy to learn black history. We're also behind the Sankofa Club and many of the wonderful products and services that you've become accustomed to learning and growing with, right? Do me a favor. If you're watching this on replay, do me a favor and type replay in the comments. We love to engage with our audience and try to find out who's watching us live and who's watching us on replay. Also, do us a favor and let us know where you're watching from. Your location, city, and country would be great. We have some international fans, so it's very exciting to kind of see all of the different places that our people are showing up to show out as we learn every Black Friday. If you are new to our programming, this is Black Fridays, and we're running an 8-week special where we are bringing you Black history and empowerment that's going to inspire you and your children to change the world. We believe that Black history is world history. We believe that Black history is powerful enough to reshape the world, because the more and more of our young people learn about the extraordinary contributions of their ancestors will inspire them to take their place amongst the world and do their duty, right? And to change things for the better, right? So Black Fridays is a little bit of a different show. I just want to give you a quick breakdown before we jump into the meat and bones of our discussion here today. But it's broken down into 3 sections, and that's a discussion section, a reason section, and a task section. During the discussion section, I'm going to highlight some piece of Black history. In this case, today we're going to talk about the Haitian Revolution. And we're going to have a pretty brief discussion about that. And then I'm going to give you some reasons on why this information is important and imperative that is passed on to the next generation, i.e. you change it, you share it with your children and your grandchildren, and the impact that it can have on them. And then finally, our task section, I'm going to give you not exactly homework, but more insights and updates as far as the discussion here about the Haitian Revolution and the impact that it had around the world, right? So I want to encourage you to rock with us during all of our sessions and to take part of the task, because what you're seeing here on the show is actually just one piece of the Black Fridays experience, right? So you sign up at sankofaclub.com/Black Fridays, and you're going to gain access to our email list. But not only that, you're going to get additional nuggets and insights throughout the coming week that you can engage your children with, that you can learn additional facts about our subjects as well. So we want to continue to build on you outside of the 30 minutes of this particular show. We're going to keep the learning going, right? We know that there's no excuses necessary for not learning this information and passing it on to the next generation. We live in the age of information. It's time that we take that information and empower ourselves. Sometimes it only takes 5 minutes, right? That's our mantra here at the Sankofa Club. 5 minutes a day keeps the miseducation away. Say it with me. 5 minutes a day keeps the miseducation away. So outside of this 30-minute block, when you're sitting down and you're engaging with your children, a lot of the times it only takes 5 short minutes in order to change and spark the revolution in their minds and to change the world as a result. Now, I want you to note that we are providing, like I said, free resources inside of our Black Fridays package. So just sign up for sankofaclub.com/Black Fridays. You see it up here at the top. And you're going to get a bunch of additional resources and freebies throughout the week, videos and engagement, things that we can continue to learn about our subject matter. And today it happens to be the Haitian Revolutions. Okay, so just a couple of more housekeeping notes before we dive into the content, and I'm very excited about the content today. I'm not gonna ruin it by jumping into it early, but I'm fired up. Hopefully you are as well. All right, so I gotta alert you to our sponsors, right? That's our host company, the Sankofa Club. But the Sankofa Club is a resource to help parents educate their children in Black history and culture. The Sankofa Club helps parents educate their children in Black history and culture. Membership allows you instant access to engage your children with activities and worksheets and classes taught by our teachers 5 days a week, edifying the ancestors and their contributions to the world. Black history is world history, and we know that knowledge empowers our children to liberate themselves. I encourage you to join us and learn more information at sankofaclub.com. Okay, so that's all out of the way. Freddie, let's get down to business. Okay, we came to talk about the Haitian Revolution. I'm very excited about this. I didn't. I started learning so much. Excuse me. I started learning so much about the Haitian Revolution. It kind of started getting a bit overwhelming to me. I didn't really know exactly where to start the story, right? So I said, let me go back into the history a little bit. But before I do, I want to outline a couple of things that I got to admit, it just flat out shocked me as I learned these things, as I studied the Haitian Revolution a little bit more in depth. I thought I was aware and I thought I understood, what it was and the crux of the matter. But, man, that Western educational system is something else, boy. It does a good job in making sure that we're thrown off the path completely. So give yourself some grace if you're not exactly familiar with everything that I'm going to cover here today, or some of the things that you experience inside of the Sankofa Club or throughout the Urban Intellectuals universe. Give yourself some grace, right? We've been miseducated, but let's continue to battle and build instead of just worrying about it, right? We can continue to build 5 minutes a day, right? You're spending a couple with me. I promise you're going to learn a couple of things. So check it out. First of all, I didn't realize that the revolution lasted so long, right? When we think about the Haitian Revolution, it seems like just the last couple of years is what's talked about, but really the revolution officially lasted for 13 years, right? So almost 13 years, 1791 to 1804, right? Secondly, voodoo isn't what you think it is, right? This was very interesting to me. Is actually Vodun, right? Vodun. There, I believe that's the pronunciation. Vodun, and it comes from Africa, and it means raising up sacred energies. Raising up sacred energies. That point right there is going to be critical as we move a little bit forward. You will start to understand why I'm mentioning these things. Freedom or death. Freedom or death was like the belief of the people, right? So they didn't, because they knew that they go back to the ancestral plane, right? So this was the Vodun, right? The raising up of those energies. They knew once the physical body was dead, they would go back to the ancestral plane, and they wasn't afraid, right? Freedom or death was the mantra. So I think about the line going around, and I'm not my ancestors. We not my ancestors, and all of that disrespectful nonsense. You're right, you're not your ancestors, because if you're your ancestors, you might pull off a revolution, right? Okay, and the women of the revolution were everything. The women of the Haitian Revolution were everything, right? Very important point that I think gets glossed over a lot. And if you've been around the Urban Intellectuals universe for a while, then you know that we go out of our way to try to edify and glorify our women, right? One, because they deserve it. Two, because they're under mentioning about their contributions. I read something that said men can start a fight, but you can't have a revolution without our women, right? And I think that is poignant going into this discussion about the Haitian Revolution. Okay, so where does it start? Okay, the scene starts 1492 with the other Columbus, right? I mean, the other Wallace, that Christopher Columbus, right? I think there was a Indigenous Day earlier in this week, so that's really great timing that we can bring up this monster and his terror that he brought to the West. But when he sailed west in 1492, that actually marked the demise of the Moors in Europe, right? I talked about this before if you follow us. But in 1491, well, from 711 to 1491, the Moors ruled Spain, particularly. But towards the end, they were getting pushed further and further south. They were defeated at the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. And in 1491, you know this story because King Ferdinand and Princess Isabella got together, and then they christened Christopher Columbus to sail west from the Alhambra, right? He brought his terror and his madness west. So he lands in Hispaniola, as he called it, Hispaniola. Eventually became known as San Domingo, but the native people of the area called it Haiti or Haiti, right? My dialect isn't there. I've been miseducated. I'm disconnected from our culture, so forgive me if I mispronounce a name or three. I'm doing my best, right? Okay, so he sails west to meet up with he basically started exterminating the Taino people right there in the islands and in the Caribbean, or the Arawak people, just depending on the frame that you want to use. But around 1660, our story begins to pick up, right? So this is when, okay, so Spain kind of controls Hispaniola, right? San Domingo, right? But in around 1660, France starts to gain a foothold in the area, and in particularly in Western Haiti, right, or Western San Domingo, which is Haiti, right, modern day Haiti, and then the other side is modern day the Dominican Republic, right? But in 1697, they really, that's when they solidified the area and the ownership as a colony in the West for France, right? This colony was incredibly important because it literally rained in money on the French government or the French country, right? So much so that 50% of the world's sugar and coffee came out of Haiti. Like, this is what actually was the export, or the chief export out of the area that they were utilizing and enslaving people to rape the land. And during that time, that colonies, they couldn't just utilize their resources. They had to farm the resources and then ship it off to the host country, which would have been France, and then have it to be shipped back to be sold to them directly and to other individuals. You might be familiar with somebody who got pissed off with that setup, who were just north of Haiti. The American Revolution happened in 1776, right? So just keep that in mind as I'm gonna frame this in just a second. But there was terrible working conditions in this area, right? And it's kind of hard to think about slavery as being like one place worse than the other, right? It's just all seems terrible to us, right? But I guess American chattel slavery was horrific, but this chattel slavery was something different. Brutal is the word. Demonic is the word. They were saying that people, the life expectancy of the enslaved people there in Haiti at the time was like 1 to 2 years, right? 1 to 2 years. So think about that in terms of turnover. So as a result, they had to constantly be shipping in new Africans to work the lands, right? So keep that in mind. Let's put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to it, right? So there, like I said, there's a constant influx, so much so that there's literally a 10-to-1 ratio of Haitians, or the Africans that will become Haitians, there in the area of Haiti, to every French citizen. Now, in addition to this, the French citizens are divided into 3 different sects, right? There are the big whites, the little whites, and pretty much the mulattoes, right? The big whites are, this is their terminology, the big whites are the plantation owners, right? The capitalist that owns the exploitation machine. The little whites work the land for the big whites, who sometimes are even on the island. They're still in France holding their holdings, and then having the little whites work for them. So there were white people coming over trying to get rich from France, that worked the lands, that did all of the work, but the hard labor, the manual labor that the Africans were taking care of. And then you have this mulatto class that was pretty much the result of the raping of our women, and they're having their offspring over and over. They would marry one another to lighten up the society, but also they utilized that mulatto class who was free, right? So they freed their children, and then they used them as a barrier between the enslaved people and the big whites, right? And the little whites were just kind of lost in the middle. Now, when you do your homework, you do your research, you can really delve deeper into the details of all of this, because it kind of flip-flops back and forth. But just know that the mulatto class does not identify with the enslaved Africans at all. They didn't become part of the abolitionist class. They just tried to view themselves as something different. Most of them, right? Because a couple of them did actually take part in the revolution when it came. But it's wild because there's moments where literally everybody switched sides, switched positions in and out over this 13-year period. It's absolutely bonkers. But then you have to factor in the fact that the French were going through a French Revolution of their own. So they were constantly changing power. So whomever come into power at the time would make an edict that say, hey, oh, the slaves are free throughout all of the colonies. And then they would be overthrown. Somebody else to come into power and say, no, slavery's still on. Forget that, right? So that led to a situation where Toussaint would switch a lot of sides, right? I'm going to get to that in just a second, but it's just really interesting when you start to put all of this together, right? Okay. Now, I got to go back to the 1 to 2 years of life expectancy, right? So it's a brutal situation. It's the job, the sugar cane, working the sugar fields was just like, it was just a death sentence, right? Because they were, you either get beat to death, starved to death, or died in the process of making the sugar, refining the sugar, losing limbs, all types of madness and horrors that we can't even imagine today, right? But this created a condition, like I said, where they had to constantly bring the new influx of Africans in, right? So you had an influx of people who had attachment to their cultural history, their pride, their understanding of who they are. They wasn't a monolith, right? When they come over on them boats, they wasn't a monolith, but the Haitians or the Africans that became Haitians formed together and started to fight against their oppressor, right? It just reminds me of us here in the States. And I hear so many people talking about, oh, well, Freddie, we're not a monolith. We're not a monolith. And yes, I'm mockingly making fun because you got a foot on your neck and you're arguing about you're not a monolith. Imagine if the Haitians were to have been so idiotic not to form not to unify and fight against their oppressors because they were from different tribes or different communities in Africa. Like literally, we all on the same boat going through the same nonsense, but we're going to stop and say, we're not a monolith, Freddie, like get out of here, right? So fortunately for them, that didn't happen. They had to have warrior spirit inside of them, and they wanted to unite as a people and get free, right? Remember, I talked about freedom or death, right? And that was really the leader of the movement, which you find a lot of movements in our community. Somebody rises to the top, they chop the head off, the movement falls apart. Well, freedom was the leader. Freedom was the head of this operation. So until they got free, it was just gonna be war after war after war, right? Because that's who they put at their figurehead, and they wasn't following individuals, something that we can learn from today. Okay, I spoke about the women of the revolution, right? One woman in particular, Adabar, how do I say this? Adabaraya. I am tearing it up. Adabaria Teo, right, was a Mino warrior. The Mino warriors are from the Domini tribe, the Dohami tribe, excuse me. You're more familiar with them from Black Panther, right? Remember the warriors all in red with the shaved heads? These are actual individuals called the Mino, right? And they were women warriors in modern day Benin. But they were fierce battles, right? Warriors, right? So one of them in particular, her name when she reached San Domingo, or Haiti, was Victoria Monto, right? But she came with her warrior knowledge, and a lot of the individuals that came from Africa came with their history, their culture, and their knowledge to fighting and resistance, right? So this was imperative, but particularly the women who were warriors at the time, and she brought this keen fighting sense and knowledge about warfare to the men of the revolution. So you actually find that the women are educating, not only fighting, the women are fighting, but they're also educating and leading the strategy and educating the men and growing them up as well. So you really find that the backbone of the revolution lies with the women. Okay, August 1791, Duty Bookman calls there's a revolt going on. Bookman leads them in a revolt that is led with voodoo. So on the time, voodoo, as we call in the United States, we call it voodoo, which is Vodou, right? Which again means raising of the spirits, right? Was banned, right? But this was an outright signal of defiance. They were tired of France garbage, and this was time to strike, right? So they hold this ritual, this voodoo, Vodun ritual inside of an alligator swamp, right? This was a very interesting detail because they figured that the Frenchmen didn't have this type of relationship with nature. So they were utilizing that in the space to build up and to call upon the ancestors and raise the spirits before they started their attack. And then all hell starts to break loose because now the revolution is on, right? All right, I want to give you some overview of the revolution, and then we can come back and pick apart a couple of the details, right? So I talked about 1791. I talked about Duty Bookman organizing the uprising. Of course, there was pushback into that. Later that year, later in August of 1791, 1792, Louis VIII is executed. So this is when now as they're starting to fight for their freedom, the people are saying, oh, well, no, we're going to double down. So they've been waffling back and forth between slavery and no slavery. Or is it the mulatto is going to be totally free? Like there's a whole bunch of infighting going on. Toussaint L'Ouverture was like a skilled statesman, right? So he was a general in the French army, but he had relationships with the French, the British, the Americans, and the Spanish, right? So he utilized this time to see France was weakening and they're changing their positions on slavery. So he hops on to the Spanish side and then starts to utilize the forces there to fight the French and to fighting again for freedom. By 1794, again inside of the French Revolution, the talk was switching again, and the French shit.